What is up, and welcome to the Red and Bold Show. I am your host, Marc Adams. You can find me wherever you watch or listen at 49ers Camelot. I'm joined by Anthony Robertson, my co-host, who you can find at 49ers Cutback, wherever you watch or listen. Ant, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good. And this is a win week, right? We get an extra week to kind of live off a Cowboys victory. It's always nice when you beat the Cowboys. Growing up and being a younger guy during the early 1990s, the Cowboys 49ers rivalry was really big. So anytime you get a win over the Cowboys, I'm feeling good. I feel the same way about the New York Giants anytime we beat them and anytime we beat the Rams and now recently Seahawks. But those are all big time games. So, yeah, I'm very excited. I'm glad we get to live on a bye week of a big win.
Yeah, it's always good when you win. It's always great when you beat the Cowboys. I mean, there's just something about this rivalry. We hate them, they hate us, and that's all right. That's the way that it should be. I mean, you can tell, like, even in the game, it's chippy between the players, between the fans. It's just always a big important game, and like when you come out on top, it's good. I lived a long time in Oklahoma, grew up in Arkansas, lived in Houston for a while, and people in Houston hate the people in Dallas, and the people in Dallas hate the people in Houston, probably like a San Francisco, LA kind of thing. And so the rivalry between the two big cities in Texas are the same way. And so I've been surrounded by Cowboys fans my whole life, and so if the Cowboys do happen to win, I hear about it, and even though I don't give it back to them because I don't like when it's done to me, so I don't rub it in anybody's face, but that's all right. So welcome everybody. Welcome to those that are in the chat. See, Josh is in the chat here with us. It's been a while. Yeah, Josh, it's been a while. We've actually forgot who you are, but glad that you're here. So now we see you again. And Stand On It is in here asking for the 49ers to get healthy. So let's hope that happens soon. Well, let's jump in and talk about this a little bit. So I want to start with this. Isaac Guerendo, it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, at times he's looked like a rookie running back who's playing running back for the first time, having trouble finding the right holes. But now all of a sudden he's hitting the holes like he should. And, not all the time. He still bumped into one of his offensive linemen earlier in the game, but he hits those holes and he hits them hard and fast. And when he gets into the open field, look out, man, he could do some damage.
Yeah, I mean, this is what you're hoping you're going to see out of Guerendo in year one is growth. And I don't think they were thinking they were going to have to count on Isaac Guerendo to make plays in his rookie season. They felt like they had a stockpile of talent. You have McCaffrey, you have Elijah Mitchell, you have Jordan Mason, and then you've got Isaac Guerendo. And he was going to kind of just get used to football this season. But now he's had to get fast forward into an opportunity to go make plays, and he's going out and doing it. And I thought that there was a big difference between this game that we saw from Isaac Guerendo and the game that we saw even the week previous. The opportunities, he took advantage of them. But what we're seeing is Guerendo kick it into high gear with the speed. He is no longer being patient and waiting and then trying to hit the gas when it's time. He's hitting the gas right off the bat. And what I love the running style was, it was on point with the technique that it's supposed to be. When he was running his zone plays on the inside, you're supposed to press it to the heels of the offensive line, and he was doing that better in this game than Jordan Mason. That's a good sign for the future. Mm-hmm. But I thought he did a really good job. The speed was on display. And we're talking about a player that has such a great mixture of speed and power that the sky is the limit for him. He's just got to consistently get a little bit better with the vision, get a little bit more comfort in this offense. And I think once he does and he gets more comfortable with what Bobby Turner wants, he's just going to get better and better. But the explosiveness is huge, and that's different from a lot of running backs that the 49ers have had over the last couple of years. Since Raheem Mostert's been gone, there hasn't been a lot of speed. But now the speed is back, and it's with number 31, Isaac Guerendo.
Yeah, Josh in the chat said a Mostert with less vision, but a huge weapon if we could involve him in the passing game. Yeah, and that's huge because he actually came into the league as a more polished receiver for a running back than he was maybe as a running back. And so I'm glad to see that they're starting to use him. Kenny 49er said, I was going to watch Three's Company reruns, but I'll hang out here for a bit. That is that is the comment of the day right there. I mean,
come and knock on our door.
Anybody that passes on Three's Company deserves a shout out. And David Campbell's in the chat. He says, good afternoon, all. What's up, David? Good to have you in here. So, well, Isaac Guerendo is not the only rookie that is impressing. Ricky Pearsall is playing. He's playing well for somebody who had very little training camp, no preseason, and then, oh, by the way, was shot through the chest or in the chest through his back. I mean, like he's playing well. He's making some mistakes. There was at least one mistake Sunday night where it looked like he lined up wrong, and they were kind of telling him where to line up, and then I think they got called with maybe illegal procedure or something. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he's doing pretty well, especially for a guy that hasn't really had much practice time.
Yeah, he looks smooth, and that's exactly what I saw at training camp, was a guy who looked smooth, he looked confident. He carries himself like he's been in the league for 5 years already. There's no moment that's too big for Ricky Pearsall. He doesn't shy away from anything, contact, a job. He'll go out there and get it all done. I love Ricky Pearsall for the fact that you could tell he put in the work and all the opportunities that he had in the offseason. You don't step in this situation unless you worked your butt off during the offseason to make sure you're prepared. And you're seeing the timing with Brock Purdy, the throw on one of the out patterns, the anticipation where Pearsall barely gets his head around. The ball is right there within 3 yards. He makes the catch. That type of stuff is what's going to elevate this 49ers offense, the timing of. And now that Pearsall's getting used to what his landmarks are with his route running, and he knows he's got to get from point A to point B and be there for Brock Purdy, he's going to be able to do it because he can create separation with the way that he runs routes, the way he leans into guys, uses his body to create separation at the top of the stem of the route. He's really good at all that. Plus, he's fearless over the middle. He does not worry about taking contact. Plus, you add in the fact he can run jet sweeps. He did a really good job setting George Kittle's block on that, getting extra yardage. It's nice to see Ricky Pearsall out there making plays, and the 49ers are going to need him to make plays. He brought up in his post-game interview that he is going to have more opportunities because Brandon Ayuk is out, and he 100% is. So I love the fact that he was getting rhythm, he was getting confidence, and he just looked like he was being able to fill the part. He's a pro football player, and he looks like it in every aspect when he's out there on the field.
Yeah, he only has 8.4 yards per reception so far. But again, he's a rookie learning the position. He's been through a lot. He's missed a lot of time. And I think that that's going to get better. Like that 39-yard run against the Cowboys, that was pretty cool to see. So happy to see him. But I see that Josh in the chat wrote Cowing over Bell going forward, please. I completely agree. I want to see Jacob Cowing over Ronnie Bell and Chris Conley. I don't know why those two are in the game as much as they are. Oh, instead of Cowing, maybe Kyle just doesn't quite trust him yet. Maybe he doesn't trust him as a blocker yet. So I mean that I think that kept Ronnie Bell off the field some last year, the blocking part of it. But I definitely would like to see Cowing more because he brings something to the offense that those other guys don't bring.
Well, I can tell you right now, Kyle wants Jacob Cowing on the field. The problem is Jacob Cowing is not blocking well enough to consistently be on the field, and you can't always run away from Jacob Cowing. You can't always run pass plays when Jacob Cowing's in. You've got to have some sort of mystery to what you're going to do. And we're talking about 2 plays right now. Ronnie Bell played 15 snaps. Jacob Cowing played 13. It's getting closer. I think at some point Jacob Cowing's going to overtake Ronnie Bell. We all know we want that. We need that. And Ronnie Bell and Chris Conley are still making mistakes running routes. So Jacob Cowing's going to catch him when it comes to route running. He's already a better route runner, in my opinion, than both of them. He can create separation down the field. It's just the blocking. There's one play in particular, they're in the red zone. The 49ers would have a touchdown. Debo Samuel and Kyle Juszczyk versus two guys, but Jacob Cowing's not able to make the block and slow down the linebacker. If he does and slows him down, the 49ers walk into the end zone for a touchdown. He doesn't. That's the effect right now. But Cowing is going to be on his way. I think by the time we get a few games down the road, we'll see more Jacob Cowing and a lot less Ronnie Bell. But right now, I think that's what's holding it up is the blocking.
How impressed have you been with this rookie class? I mean, so far, whether it's Dominic Pooney or Renardo Green, I mean, those are really those five. The two receivers, the running back, and then the two that I just mentioned, Green and Pooney. How impressed have you been with them, and who have you been the most impressed with? You're not allowed to say Dominic Pooney.
Yeah, right, because that's where you would normally go. Dominic Pooney's been doing the job since he stepped on the field for the 49ers, and he just continues to look fantastic. Even when he has a down game for him, it's still above par for a 49ers offensive lineman. He just fits the part. But I think when you go up and down this rookie draft class, you find that the 49ers just hit, and they hit home runs. We're already seeing the impact of their second-round pick, Renardo Green. And, a lot of people question that. Hey, should they have taken an offensive lineman in that position? Guys like Kingsley Suamataia was available. Why didn't you go for him? Why didn't you trade up and get Roger Rosengarten? Go ahead and solidify your offensive line. What they did was go get a starting caliber player in Renardo Green and a guy that's already showing the same versatility as Deommodore Lenoir. He plays outside, but when Lenoir was out last week, guess who slid in? Renardo Green. And so Green is showing that ability to be a complete weapon that they're going to need in the future. This was not just a now pick, but a future pick. He looks like he's going to be a big hit. And then we've already talked about Guerendo. We talked about Cowing. He's going to be able to make an impact with what he does with the punt returns. But it's all throughout this draft class. Ricky Pearsall, we're finally starting to see what he can do. But even Tatum Bethune. You know what happened when D. Winters went out? It was Tatum Bethune, the 7th-round pick, that stepped in and got snaps in his place. And first play is in. He gets contact and helps with the tackle. I just love the way these guys are stepping in and making plays. No moment's too big for these rookies. They are made of the right stuff. Kyle and John talk about that all the time, made of the right stuff. This rookie class is made of the right stuff, and they hit. And I think this is going to be a huge draft class, and it's going to help the 49ers in the future. And they exactly needed this to continue to stretch out their window. These types of draft classes stretch your Super Bowl window and make it so you can kind of keep players, your high-end players, while also developing young players. It was a big draft for the 49ers.
Yeah, and it's been huge, especially with all the injuries. They've had to step up, and they have. They haven't looked like a bunch of rookies. I mean, Josh mentioned it in the chat that Dominic Pooney is one of two guards to not allow a sack or a quarterback hit. That's huge. I mean, that's so impressive for any guard, especially a rookie. We haven't seen that from, I mean, Aaron Banks has been good. But he hasn't done that kind of stuff. Spencer Burford, even John Feliciano had his moments. I mean, you have to go back to some of those guards that Jim Harbaugh had, back in the early 2010s. That offensive line was elite. It was the best in the NFL. And part of it was because their guards were just maulers. And so I really like what we're seeing from Pooney, and I tell you, if they hit on another draft class like this, then they're going to be just fine, even if they have to lose a few guys. And I saw that Josh also asked about re-signing Deommodore Lenoir. That is one of my biggest concerns right now. They have to figure out a way to keep him. They're not going to keep Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir. That's just probably not going to happen. But I would love to see them keep Demo, because I think that they really badly need to keep that guy.
Yeah, his versatility is huge for this football team. And I think because they hit on Renardo Green, it does afford them the opportunity to make a choice, Charvarius Ward or Deommodore Lenoir. And we were talking before the offseason, how can they afford both of them? Well, now we know with the way Deommodore Lenoir has played, there's no way you can afford Charvarius Ward and Deommodore Lenoir. So they're going to have to make a decision. I think everyone's leaning towards the hyena because the way he plays, the way he challenges every single wide receiver, the way he helps in the run game. Him playing nickel corner and his help in the run game often gets missed, but he is absolutely fantastic. When he's out there, he has to be a third linebacker, and he does it. He fills his lanes, he fills his holes, and he makes tackles. He just does a great job. So I think he's going to be the one that they want to sign. I think they will put all their chips in the middle and make sure they sign him. I do believe he'll be a priority for them, but he's going to test the open market, which means his money's going to go up because there are teams around this league that are going to have plenty of money and they're going to want to spend it and they will overpay. So it's going to be tough for the 49ers, but if I was them, as soon as the season was over, there's that little period between the season and free agency. I would get on the horn and make sure that you get Deommodore Lenoir locked up. You can't let him walk away. He's got to be one of your top priorities in free agency.
Yeah, I remember when I first started doing podcasts, this would have been right after the 2022 season, when Brock Purdy ruptured his elbow, basically almost was one-armed after that. And I had Oscar Aparicio from the Better Rivals podcast. I had him on my show. And I did this little segment where I named a player and I was having him give me a one-word, the first thing that pops in your head, one word. And when I said Deommodore Lenoir, his one word was catch point. And I said, okay, explain that. And he said, he's always in position, but he just doesn't seem to make the play. And so I think that now we're seeing him not only in position, but now he's making the play, and he did last year as well. And so I think this was back when Mooney Ward and Emmanuel Mosley were the starters. And so then that next season, Lenoir started, breaking in there. But I think that was a good call by Oscar back then, but I don't think that he would use that for Lenoir now.
No, he's a complete player. He can do it all. He can create turnovers. The 49ers are second best in the league as far as creating interceptions, second best in the league as far as creating takeaways. And Deommodore Lenoir is a big reason why. He can do it all. And, even that deep play down the field, they ran a fade pattern, and they're trying to get Kevontae Turpin down the sideline against Deommodore Lenoir, and he's running stride for stride, hand on his hip, perfect technique. It has to be a perfect throw and a perfect catch. It was a perfect throw, just wasn't a perfect catch. Lenoir did everything right. Used the sideline as a second defender. Those are the types of things you see, and you're like, wow, he's a big-time player. And I think when you see all the elements of his game, he just does more than anyone else in the secondary. There's no one in that secondary that can play nickel, play outside, help in the run game the way he does. He's just a complete player, and that's exactly what you needed. And now he shored up a couple of positions the 49ers were having struggles at. Now we no longer question what's going to happen in the nickel. There's no question. Deommodore Lenoir is going to hold it down, and he's going to make plays.
Yeah, on that play to Turpin on the broadcast, they were talking about how, man, if he would have just made that catch, that would have been huge. But when they were showing the replays, I was watching his feet, and his second foot came down just barely out of bounds. So even if he would have caught it, I think he still would have been out. But yeah, that could have been a huge play, but great play by Lenoir. Let's talk a little bit about that Cowboys game, even though we're a few days past it now. One thing that really stood out to me is that penalties have been killing this team. It did against the Chiefs. It did some against the Seahawks, obviously against the Rams and the Cardinals, and these games that they've lost or almost lost. They have just been shooting themselves in the foot. Is that a lack of focus thing, or is it because a lot of starters have been out? Is it a combination of the two? Is it something else? Why are they making so many boneheaded mistakes?
Well, I think any of the procedural penalties, you don't get lined up right, those types of things. Those are mistakes you can't make. Those are unforced errors. I think when you're getting a penalty in the heat of the battle, a holding penalty on an edge, especially with Kittle and Juszczyk, you got a player that's bouncing outside. You're not expecting for them to try to pull away that way. I did think both players did a good job of letting go. And so you've got a referee crew that's an emphasis for them. They call more offensive holding penalties than any other crew in the NFL. So those are going to be highlighted. I thought with Charvarius Ward, the one along the goal line, I think that he was getting a little bit too physical there. That's how he plays, and he got caught. I think with the other one, it was a little bit of a joke. He had his hand on his shoulder, but he did not impede the progress. So you're going to have those. I think the procedural ones I don't like. I thought the one where you talked about earlier, Pearsall and Conley are having a conversation and move, was completely pointless. Chris Conley, as a veteran player, should have known that was a quarterback sneak, and he should have just looked at Ricky Pearsall and just said, stay there. There's no reason for them to move.
Right.
It doesn't make a difference for the play. So I think there's some of those things that are going on. So it's a mixture of mistakes and unforced errors they shouldn't make, combined with just referees calling things differently depending on crew. It doesn't mean they're bad calls. It just means that's their emphasis. And so the 49ers just got to work around that. With Charvarius Ward, he plays physical. You're probably going to get those penalties. When you have running backs that bounce outside because gaps are full, you're going to get some penalties on the edge. It's the way it goes. I don't think they're as dire. I think there was a lot of penalties in this game, but I don't think they're as dire. I think there's going to be games there's no penalties. There's going to be games there's a lot, and it just depends on what crew you're going against.
Yeah, early on, Deebo Samuel catches a pass, runs it a long way for a touchdown that gets called back because Eric Saubert was called for holding.
That was holding. That was holding.
I wrote Eric Saubert is now my least favorite 49er player. Ronnie Bell should be happy. Which Ronnie Bell, he could care less. He doesn't even know he didn't know I exist, but unless he's one of those guys that goes on to X and types in his name, then he might see me a few times. But they need to clean that stuff up, because let's go back to the first half. The first half did not go well. Especially defensively, I think it was okay. I wasn't sure how the Cowboys were actually running the ball a little bit early on, but especially Ezekiel Elliott, because he's like 70 and he was picking up yards. But especially the offense. I mean, you had Deebo Samuel drop a pass that would have been a big one, at least a conversion. Brock Purdy was off. Things just weren't going well in the first half. But then in the second half, they completely turned things around, at least in the third quarter. They dominated. I think I put this, let me see if I can find this. Here were the Dallas possessions in the third quarter: interception, punt, and punt. The two punts were 3 and outs. And so the Cowboys gained 13 yards in the third quarter. The 49ers, meanwhile, scored 3 touchdowns, I think. And so they were just completely dominant as a team in the third quarter. What did you see on film that made things so different? Why were they so bad in the first half? We'll get to the fourth quarter here in a minute. But then in the third quarter, so dominant. What was different?
I don't think there was a whole lot different for the defense from first half to second half as far as the way they played the run. A lot of times it was 7-man boxes, 2 high safeties. They've been doing this pretty consistently. I think there's times where the run game, it gets going for the opposing team because they get movement along the defensive line. Jordan Elliott sometimes not able to hold his ground against double teams, and they'll kind of wash him down. Same thing with Clea Davis. Those guys can get moved. But I thought for the most part, they did a pretty good job. There was a couple of, runs by Ezekiel Elliott, but I mean, they held them to just over 50 yards rushing. They absolutely dominated. And that's even with a Turpin run that got 12 yards. So there was just not a lot of good yardage for Dallas when it came to the run game. And I thought they did a great job in the first half. And I thought it carried into the second half. And we've talked about this before. When the 49ers get up, that's when they're the best on defense, and teams have to completely turn away from the run game, and that's what happened. So you see the low numbers with the Jets game, with Dallas, with Seattle, as they turn to the passing game to go ahead and try to catch up. And that's when the 49ers are usually the best. Now, we know that there's some miscues in the fourth quarter, which I'm sure we're going to talk about in a second, but ultimately that defense was playing good, and they came in with a good game plan to take away that run game. And I thought they did a good job overall. I thought it was 3 quarters of pretty good defense for the 49ers.
All right, so let's get to that other quarter, because as a team, I didn't feel like they played well in the first half. The defense was good. The offense was bad. In the third quarter, both were dominant. In the fourth quarter, both went away. So what changed, if anything, in the fourth quarter? Why do they keep letting teams back? It's like you said it just a minute ago that this defense is at their best whenever they're up. But that hasn't always been the case this year. Think the Rams game, think the Cardinals game, to an extent the Seahawks game, and then this game as well. Why do they keep letting teams come back in the fourth quarter?
Well, I mean, it started with a pivotal penalty on Charvarius Ward. The 49ers had forced a stop, and it was another time that they had 3rd and 10, 3rd and long situation, and they got Charvarius Ward on a pass interference call. That gave Dallas new life. Then the 49ers forced a 4th down, and Deommodore Lenoir gets turned around in a bunch set. Cavante Turpin, he expected to run a vertical. He doesn't. He breaks off underneath, and you see Deommodore Lenoir do a full pirouette, have to come back, and they give up a key catch there. Then you have the breakdown in coverage with CeeDee Lamb on the mesh concept where somebody doesn't get the memo because Charvarius Ward does not run with him, and everyone else looks like they're running man coverage. So we get a breakdown in coverage that ends up producing the touchdown, but you can see it's 3 mistakes. 1 a penalty, 1 a 4th down breakdown where Deommodore Lenoir should be in coverage on Cavante Turpin, and he gets turned around, and then the complete breakdown where everyone makes a mistake. So you see how they do it. But look at what I just talked about. 3rd and 10, they would have had to stop. 4th and 6, they would have had to stop. And then you have the breakdown in the goal line. So it's kind of like a microcosm of just little mistakes that really hurt them. And then when you get to the other drive, that was the touchdown, it's just a complete breakdown. Jair Brown runs right through Renardo Green, so CeeDee Lamb gets wide open. Those types of things are frustrating, but that's not a defense just being taken advantage of. That's a defense that has certain mistakes that they need to clean up. That's where I look at it. If Dallas would have just been marching down the field like boom, 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 never facing 3rd down, just rolling on the 49ers, I would have a lot of worry about what was going to happen in the future. But I thought overall the defense was in pretty good calls. The players just couldn't execute and get off the field, which is a something they have to do. But let's remember, 49ers were really good on 3rd down this game. They did a good job against the Cowboys offense on 3rd down, and there were a lot of things to like. We just got to make a couple more plays. And I think if they do, this game goes from being what it ended up being close to a huge blowout. And the 49ers are feeling a lot differently about this. And I think fans would be as well. But it's just a few things here or there that broke down in that fourth quarter that they got to clean up.
Yeah, just to me, it kind of felt like they let off the gas a little bit. So I mentioned that in the third quarter, Dallas gained 13 yards. In the fourth quarter, they gained 140 yards, had the 2 touchdowns. In the third quarter, it was interception and 2 3-and-outs. In the fourth quarter, it was touchdown, and then the turnover on down. So certainly that needs to be better. Let me ask you something real quick. You mentioned Jair Brown. When Talanoa Hufanga returns, and I guess there's a chance that he won't return, but I think that he will, but sounds like Kyle's not fully committed to that yet. Let's say that he returns. How are they going to set up the safeties? Because I don't know that I'm playing Jair Brown over Malik Mustafa right now, but I mean, these safety positions are supposed to be interchangeable enough that they should be able to swap one out for the other, but are they more likely to not do that and just go back to Hufanga and Brown, or are they going to find a way to get Mustafa in there?
This one's going to be interesting because I don't know how you keep Hufanga off the field. I've had people come through and tell me, hey, let's just not bring Hufanga back and let's play with the safeties we got. I don't think that's even a possibility because Talanoa Hufanga is an all-pro when he's playing at the highest of levels. And so that would be a vast improvement over what we've gotten at the safety position. Now, with that being said, both safeties played good in this game against the Dallas Cowboys. Both did. I mean, Jair Brown had a mistake here or there, Malik Mustafa as well, but those are to be expected. That's normal when you're playing football. I don't know. I've started bringing this up over the last couple of weeks. I don't know for sure that when Hufanga comes back, it's not Hufanga and Malik Mustafa who play over Jair Brown. I think that Jair Brown has played good. I don't think he's played great this season. I think he's just had games where he's played good. I think there's also been some struggles for him. So I still see moments where I see him flat-footed, getting beaten coverage. I see him not being where he's supposed to be. A situation like Bernardo Green where he should have worked over the top and he ran through him. Those types of things can't happen. And so I think there's a question mark there. Now, what will the 49ers ultimately decide to do? That I don't know. My guess is they'll go with a rotation where we'll see both of those guys sometimes with Talanoa Hufanga, depending on matchup and depending on what they want to see, who's going to be in the box, that sort of thing. It'll be more kind of like we saw Hufanga's rookie year, where we saw him come in for Tart some of the time. I think that's what we could see for Malik Mustafa and Jair Brown as they split time around Hufanga, depending on matchup.
How do you see this win setting up the rest of the season for the 49ers? They're at 4-4 now that they're on their bye. Had they lost this game, they would be at 3-5, and things are looking a little bit bleaker. Obviously they're about to go to Tampa when they come out of the bye. Tampa's playing, I think, on Monday night, so they're not only going to be at a rest disadvantage, the Bucks I'm talking about, from not being on a bye while the 49ers are, but they're playing on Monday night. I think that's right. If that's the case, what do you see? Like, that's got to be advantage 49ers. So if they come out and they win that game, and then they have, what do they have? Seattle after that, at home. So then comes the tough games at Green Bay, at Buffalo. How did this win? This was a big win. How does this win set up the rest of the season?
Well, I mean, it was a must win. It's as close to a must win as you can have, not in playoff football, but they had to win. Now that they're 4-4, they're basically got an even slate, right? It's a 9-game season. We got to win a lot of football games. But you look at the NFC West, which you ultimately need to win. That's the key to get into the playoffs. And everyone is 4-4. And then the Rams are 3-4. So you're right there in the mix. You control your own destiny because you still play every one of these teams. You still play every single NFC West team coming up. Now, it's very important that you go in and you beat a Tampa Bay Buccaneers team that has a really good offense, but they're missing their 2-star wide receivers. You have to go in there, execute, beat Tampa Bay, and get a winning streak going. If you can put 2 together in a row and then cap that off by beating Seattle, that will set you up for that tough 2-game stretch at Green Bay, back for Thanksgiving, and then at the Buffalo Bills. So that's where it gets a little bit tough for the 49ers. But then you get into a situation where if you've taken care of the first 2 of this 4-game stretch, if you can split with the second 2, you got to feel like you're very comfortable being 7-5 with a stretch run where you have some teams you can beat, got teams like Miami and others that are going to be coming up on that schedule. So I think this really worked out for the 49ers as far as this is another chance for them to go on a good run, but they have to play consistent good football. They have to play football like they played in the third quarter against the Dallas Cowboys. If they can consistently do that, that's going to help. And it's going to be a lot easier if you have Christian McCaffrey and you get Talanoa Hufanga back and Trey Greenlaw. That's when this team can really start rolling. And we know John Lynch is going to be looking around at the trade deadline as well for even more firepower for either the defense or the offense. So it is definitely all hands on deck. But I think the 49ers set themselves up with this big win.
Well, that's a great segue because the trade deadline is almost here. And so I want to see what you thought the 49ers might do, whether they'll add, whether they'll trade away somebody. There are thoughts around the league that they might trade away a player. I'd say a week ago, Diana Rossini was mentioning Deebo Samuel as a possibility. I think she's backed off from that and is talking more now. It could be Charvarius Ward. Obviously, horrible news yesterday that Mooney lost his baby girl, and so our hearts go out to him. Gosh, I find it difficult to think that they might trade him after what this, after this happened. Not that they are going to make emotional decisions over a business decision, but they love these guys. And so because I had a fan reach out to me for our mailbag, and said something about how Bill Walsh always let go of a player a year early. And yes, he did that, but it took a toll on him. It hurt his relationship with his team at times. And I think that that's something that he talked about after he was no longer a coach, that he kind of, I don't want to say he regretted it, but I think that there were some mixed feelings over that. And it's because these coaches, these GMs love these players. And so to think about trading away Deebo Samuel or thinking about trading away Charvarius Ward, especially in light of what he's been through, I just don't think that they're going to trade anybody away, especially because they're still in this. And if they trade away Deebo or they trade away Kittle, that's not going to happen, by the way. Or if they trade away Mooney Ward, what are they saying? What the message that they're sending is, yeah, maybe we're in, maybe we're not. I think that they're probably going to bring in, my prediction is that they bring in, I'm going to say a defensive tackle, somebody that can help, a run stuffer type. Next, I think it might be an edge rusher. I think that receiver, that's what everybody's talking about, but I think that's lower on the needs list. And so I don't expect that as much. But so I'm going to ask you what you think they're going to do. But listen to this. This is players they're getting back or should be getting back. Christian McCaffrey, the Offensive Player of the Year. Juwan Jennings, who before his injury was the best receiver on the team this season. Dre Greenlaw, the enforcer on defense. John Feliciano, who started in the Super Bowl. Talanoa Hufanga, the former All-Pro. Yetur Gross-Matos, who hasn't played a whole lot for the 49ers, but I think could be a good guy on the edge that maybe they would move inside some. So those are big players they're getting back. I mean, they could say, you know what? We're not going to trade for anybody. Instead, we're going to just let all these guys come back. And it's like we've made several trades because we should be a lot better. What do you think they're going to do, if anything, at the trade deadline?
Well, I definitely don't think they're going to trade anyone away. I don't think that trading Deebo away makes any sense after a Brandon Ayuk injury. You don't weaken yourself at a position you've already been weakened at. So that one's definitely got to be off the board. Plus, Deebo Samuel, when he's right, there's nobody better in the open field in this league than he is. The guy's absolutely fantastic. And then when you talk about Charvarius Ward, with the way the 49ers use a compensatory pick program, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to trade a guy away. I mean, what are you going to get for Charvarius Ward that you can't get in the offseason? He goes, signs a big deal. You get a third-round pick. I'm not really seeing the advantage of trading away all-pro caliber player and not having his services and then still getting the draft pick that you want in the offseason. So I don't see that happening. When it comes to getting a player, I think you kind of laid it out right. I do think they're going to look around and try to find players that they potentially need. I think this week and the simulated practices that Christian McCaffrey is going through is going to be huge for the 49ers' involvement in the running back market. If Christian McCaffrey starts having any sort of soreness or struggles and they feel like maybe he won't be that guy, then they might be involved in the running back market. A guy like Raheem Mostert could be available. They could bring someone like him in, Miles Sanders from Carolina. Those are a couple of guys to keep your eye on that could come in and help out the young guys. Jordan Mason's been dealing with the sprain on his shoulder. So you got to make sure it's not Garendo for, 25 snaps a game. You just can't have that. So bringing in another guy could be important there. So I think that's a big part of it. But I think defensive line, defensive end is always something you can look for, especially with defensive line being a little bit of a struggle when it comes to depth. I don't think Kalia Davis or Evan Anderson really played that great against Dallas. And I think that you could look to improve at the starting role. And that way you could get Jordan Elliott to a backup role with Kevin Givens. And that's when you'll really feel more comfortable with the rotation. So, yeah, getting guys like that, maybe a Calais Campbell who's going towards the end of his career, but still playing well in the interior could be a place the 49ers go. Then you look at the Houston Texans, and they got Harold Landry, they got Arden Key. Those would be two big additions. Add one of those guys, and you know what you're going to get from Key. But Landry's a guy that can get double-digit sacks every single season and just improve your rotation at certain positions. Those are keys as well. But I think John Lynch is going to keep his ear to the ground. There's usually some sort of a surprise. Some team all of a sudden decides they want to trade a player to get some big picks because they don't feel they can re-sign him or for whatever reason. and maybe you get involved in it. And so I think there could be a wide receiver maybe that ends up coming on the market that no one's expecting, that maybe they could go get if they felt it was going to help their team. So I do think that there are some opportunities, and I think some of it is kind of going to fall on, is Christian McCaffrey healthy? But I think the 49ers are all in on going in and winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't really think about the McCaffrey situation. That's huge, because you're right. If he's looking like he may not be healthy the rest of the way, they could potentially just shut him down, because the last thing you want is for him to come in and rupture an Achilles, because that's going to make things so much worse. And for a running back, that could potentially be a career ender if it's just the right way. Let me get to this starred comment here from Kenny. He asked, will Feliciano take over the center role? I want to get your thoughts on that. I want to get your thoughts on how Jake Brendel has been looking. I know that the 49ers coaches are high on Brendel, but what do you think? Could they end up benching Brendel in favor of Feliciano?
I don't think Brendel's played bad enough for them to replace him right now. I thought he actually had one of his best games in this game against Dallas. He's had two really good games, one in week 4, this one, another good one, where it wasn't Jake Brendel mistakes that caused any problems for the 49ers. I think that John Feliciano is a great player, and from all accounts, it looks like he's ready to come back. Some of the things he posted on Twitter, but the 49ers haven't talked about opening up his 21-day window. There was a conversation where one of the reporters asked Chris Forrester about John Feliciano, and he talked about his ability to be able to start, but not his ability that he was going to start. And I thought that was interesting, where he talked about him maybe being a backup offensive lineman. And if that's the case, they might just sit on him right now. They don't have to bring him back. They don't have to designate him for return. So I don't know what's going to happen with John Feliciano. I think that John Feliciano has proven in his career that he can be a very good center, but I don't know if the 49ers feel like they can make that move right now. Continuity along the offensive line has been pretty good. They have had the same 5 guys the entire season, and there has to be something that goes into that as an offensive line. So I don't know if you upset the apple cart by making a change, especially at center, a guy that makes all the calls and all the changes. I know Feliciano can do it, but I don't know if Chris Forrester is willing to pull that trigger. I think if this would have been in the training camp and Feliciano wouldn't have got hurt, this would have been a real competition, but he was hurt. And so now I think they're probably going to stick with Brendel, and I don't know what that means for Feliciano. Maybe if there's an injury to Banks or to somebody else, maybe then they bring him back, or if Brendel gets hurt, then that would happen. But right now, I think they're kind of just sitting on it and just saying, hey, we got him in reserve in case something happens. But until then, we don't really have to make a move.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought. And Josh mentioned in the chat, hard to replace a center mid-season in this scheme. So, yeah, and you mentioned upsetting the apple cart. Offensive lines tend to be one of those position groups where they really count on working together and gelling as a group. So yeah, that might be difficult. Next week, we'll be back at our normal time and talking 49ers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Anything that you want to add before we take off today?
Yeah, hopefully next week we're talking about some trades. Maybe the 49ers made a move. We added some players. They open up Christian McCaffrey's practice window next week, and we'll start feeling really good about McCaffrey potentially playing against Tampa Bay, and we could potentially have a whole new player to talk about. It's good news for the 49ers right now. I think right now is a positive view and outlook on the season, and they've just got to continue going through it and getting it done against Tampa Bay. I'm kind of excited about where they're at now. If you talked to this a week ago, I may not have been as excited, but I thought there was enough that they strung together against Dallas to get everyone optimistic about what they could do in the future.
Sounds great, and we'll look forward to that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. For those that are with us live and for those that are listening later, we appreciate the time, appreciate the support. Before you hang up, before you move on for the rest of your day, please take a moment to like and subscribe to both channels. Really means a lot to us. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the bye. I don't like bye week. just because I hate when the 49ers aren't playing, but this comes at the perfect time for this team. So I'm going to enjoy them getting to rest and recover. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.